Okay, folks, part 17 of my collection with the alternative bookcase. First up, we got a book by Ivo Andrić, The Vizier's Elephant, and 3 novellas. Good stuff. He was a Serbian writer, and he won the Nobel Prize. And the novellas span from the period of the Ottoman Empire to World War II, pardon. And it's pretty good stuff. Some good humor, some serious stuff. Modern Library Edition. No, is it a Modern Library or Gateway? Whatever. It's a pretty good book. Okay, next up is a famous book or infamous book, depending on which side of the Great Schism. Not Great Schism, because that's Eastern Orthodox and Catholicism, but the schism between Protestantism and then the Protestants and the Catholics. Fox's Books of Martyrs. And basically, this is an excellent edition by Oxford Classics. It has the old woodcut prints of the pictures of the martyrs getting killed and the tortures they went through. And there's accounts of them. The burning of Rose Allen's hand. This was during the suppression of Protestantism under Mary I, Queen Mary. They called her Bloody Mary. And some of it is perhaps maybe, the accounts are not overcooked, but there was a suppression going on both sides. But when Queen Mary came in, it really did turn the tide for Catholics, and there's a lot of burning and stuff. And here's a scene where they're getting ready to burn some people here. And the woodcuts are pretty good. And this is at Smithfield. It's a really good book. The accounts, the historical accounts that were written by Fox, and they give a life of all these people that were martyred, and it's a very good book. Good historical data of a terrible time. Okay, next up is a book. It's sort of middle brow. Daniel J. Borston. The afterword by George Will. What an empty suit that guy is. The Image: A Guide to Pseudo Events in America, and basically it's about the self-fulfilling prophecies, the magical qualities of what is called prestige, dissolving forms, the lost art of travel. It's kind of it's a popular book, and it's not bad, but it's basically a takedown of media culture, which it's a pretty easy target and a worthy target, I must add. And it's a valuable book, but he could have done a lot better. He could have went into the true roots of all that, but of course he didn't do that. Instead, he wanted to focus on the image and not what's behind the image. Okay, here's a great world's classic Oxford edition of Sergei Aksakov's The Years of Childhood. And again, these are semi-autobiographical works by Sergei Aksakov about his childhood. And again, as I mentioned before about the book before, the last in the trilogy, A Russian Schoolboy. This is the second in the trilogy, and again, you really get a sense of living on a country estate. His family was pretty wealthy. His he was a mama's boy. He really loved his mother. He also loved his father, but he was really, the mother really shines throughout this work, and her character is really brought out. And it's a pretty neat, again, very tender, very well written. I mean, it's just a beautiful book. a beautiful book, and I can't recommend it enough. The whole trilogy, from starting with a Russian gentleman going to years of childhood, and then it ends with a Russian schoolboy by Sergei Aksakov. It's just awesome. Okay, next up is a book, a later work by Gaddis, William Gaddis, author of The Recognitions in J.R. They have to put that. Carpenter's Gothic. And, it's a pretty good book. I like Gaddis. I like him. And it's a pretty good book. That's all I'm going to say. You really can't describe a plot or anything when it comes to Gaddis. Now you can with Pynchon because he has plots. I mean, there are actual themes and stuff. There are themes in Gaddis, and there are plot motifs, but there's more of a narrative style that sort of dominates, and that is not a criticism of Gaddis, because the way he constructs the book is just fascinating and sort of brings out different aspects of character that you would rarely find in a novel. It's not prosaic at all. It's sort of like, I want to say this is going to be funny and it's probably going to be ridiculous. It's sort of like Cubism applied to prose and narrative, prose narrative. And it really is. The sound and the pace of the prose is something. Okay, this is the first volume of Aksakov's famous trilogy, Sergei Aksakov, A Russian Gentleman, and it focuses on his grandfather and provincial life in the reign of Catherine the Great, and his grandfather Stepan Mihailovich, and tradition and love of the land. You would think it would be a very conservative novel, but it really goes past all that. Conservative in the sense of values and stuff like that. Not necessarily very political. But again, everything is political, right? They say. But this is a very deep study of a family in it, the origins of a family in it, and his father being born, and his father's childhood and stuff like that. A lot of fishing, a lot of hunting, a lot of carriage rides, stuff like that. Beautiful stuff. Just that the trilogy is outstanding. Okay, here's a excellent book by Wilkie Collins called Armadale, and it's a kind of it's a page turner, suspense, and Lydia Quilt, who is the flame-haired temptress, bigamist, laudanum addict, and husband poisoner. She's a devious woman, and throughout this novel, she plots to destroy two heirs of an estate, and it's really well done. Wilkie Collins really knows a lot about, and it's also quasi a detective story too, about detecting what's going on and who's behind all these machinations. Collins is really great with this. This stands with Moonstone and The Woman in White as a really good suspense novel. It's really good, and it's kind of neglected, but it's strong. Lydia Quilt and the other characters are very strong characters. Okay, next up is a very, very funny novel, and it's the second in the Barchester Chronicles series after The Warden, and it's called Barchester Towers. And in it, we get the continuing of The Warden, but you get further into other families and the bishop and the conflict between the High and Low Torques factions, and it's really nice. You get great characters like Miss Prudy and the unctuous Mr. Slope and the gentle Mr. Harding. I'm telling you, the characters in this are really interesting and great. They're really full-figured, and not physically, but they leap out of the page. And this book there are some really funny moments in this book, and there are some really tragic moments in this book. And the way Trollope definitely handles it all is pretty nice. He's a good juggler. and the way he stages characters and stuff is just outstanding. All right, come on. I know you don't want to go back. You think I'm going to read you again. You want my eyes to rip through your print again. I know. Okay, here we go with the stories of Heinrich Boll. Now, I read a series of books, and a series of stories by him, Children's or Civilians too, I mentioned earlier, from the other bookcase, and that's a really touching, and mostly stories about World War II. And, some of those stories are in here, and it's also a wider edition of his stories. It's basically an entire collection of them over, nearly 700 pages of them, yeah. I think it gets to 700, yeah, it does. No, it just misses it. Really good stuff. Boll is a good story writer, and he is also an excellent novelist. Okay, here's another collection of stories by Heinrich Boll called The Safety Net. Heinrich Boll, The Safety Net Knopf. And again, some good stories. A shorter edition. These are later stories. The Safety Net being a novella. Pretty good stuff. Oh, I think this is a series of stories. I hope it's not a novel. Yeah, it is a novel. You can tell, folks, I haven't read this. So, yeah, it's a novel. I'm going to have to read this. All right, next up is a book that I have read, and it's fascinating. Postal Indiscretions, the correspondence of Tadeusz Borowski, who wrote Ladies and Gentlemen, This Way to the Gas Chambers, or something like that. This Way to the Gas. And he, of course, died I think he did die in This Way for the Gas, Ladies and Gentlemen, yeah. And he committed suicide in a camp. He was captured. He was ill. And they have all the letters, and the letters are very good. Some of them he wrote to other famous Polish writers and Eastern European writers, and they're really good. And from Powiat to Auschwitz, and then he wrote to his dad. And then it has an appendix. It has 3 appendix that, hold on. Yeah. 3 appendix and excellent notes. It's really good stuff. It's about all the adventures he went through in Eastern Europe at the time, and there's some pictures of him that I'll get to. Borowski's a great writer, and here he is at his post-Hitlerite apartment in Berlin, but he ended up dying from a sickness he contracted in a camp, and he was in another, like a wellness camp, and he died. And this is him again walking with, I think it was his wife. Yeah. And these are some of his books. Yeah, in 46 in Munich, Hard for Me to Live. Probably one of the last statements he ever said. He died. All right. And that's about it. Good stuff, though. Postal Indiscretions, Tadeusz Borowski. All right. Here's a book by it's an eyewitness account of the Spanish Civil War by Franz Birkenau. And yes, He's brought up as a Catholic, but he was Jewish, but he was disillusioned with communism and Marxism. And yeah, and he was kind of fought for the wrong side in the Spanish Revolution. Much like that rat George Orwell. But I won't go on to him because I really don't care for him. But of course, you get from Dame Rebecca West. Borkenau went to see the Spanish Civil War eyes and consulted nobody but his own integrity when he wrote what he saw. I'm sure that was true. I haven't read this yet, but I am going to read it sometime. Okay, a book I have read. Leonid Borodin. Okay, and this is The Story of a Strange Time. And again, it's 4 short stories about the strange time during and after World War II when a Soviet Union could only avoid trouble with the authorities by turning traditional moral values on their head and conniving in the system of betrayal. That is such a lie. And see, Borodin, this is why this book was published. And I tell you, it's well written. It's well written. But again, it's anti-Soviet propaganda. And it's so easy to write, and it's so easy to get published when you do that, especially in the 50s and 60s, and even in the 70s, and even now. I mean, we have the victims of communism people. And where's the victims of Nazism people at? The communists were very good at killing Nazis, and that's a good thing. So, yeah, Borodin was elevated. Well-written book, but you have to understand the slant of his views, which are very, I will say it, reactionary. Okay, this is an excellent collection of Gottfried Benn's writings, poems, prose, Primal Vision. I read this about a year ago. The poems are excellent, and even the prose of going to a tavern, just daily incidences, the way he was a very astute observer of human character in public and in private. And the poems are just excellent. Some very, very beautiful poems. I recommend this. If you can get this edition, it's Marion Boyer's Press. And Marion Boyer's Publishers Limited. They're out of London. It's a really excellent book. Gottfried Benn was a great poet. Okay, this is a book that I love having. It's called At the Court of the Borgias. And really fancy. And here you get from the library of Hector R. Bird, MD. He's even got a golden stamp. And I got this. Look at this. He even got a seal on it. And this, he took care of his books. Look at that. He even has his little thing here. That's pressed in. It's raised up. HRB. The book is in beautiful condition. Has a map of Italy in 1492, the Papal States, Kingdom of Naples, that kind of stuff. Republic of Siena, Republic of Florence, Duchy of Ferrara. Really good stuff. And here you get Pope Alexander VI, the much maligned, but pretty good guy. And this is being an account of the reign of Pope Alexander VI, written by his master of ceremonies, Johann Burckhardt, who is a German. And man, I really love having this. I'm so glad I got it. Okay, this is a 1997 edition. I don't really care. I just like the historical stuff in here. And this is not a very common book. And you get pictures of Rome from 1491. And then you get the introduction, a prologue. And then you get the visit of Dom, and just different incidents, that he would, because he was a chronicler for him. Charles VIII and the French in Rome and all that stuff. And Cesare's victory at Forlì, and then the murder of the Duke of Biscaglia, and Lucrezia's marriage to Alfonso d'Este. Great, great historical stuff. And you really find out that the Borgias were not necessarily eaters of human hearts and monsters. They were just actually people of the times. In very chaotic times when you didn't have, you had duchies and independent republics, and then you had the papacy attempting to unify it all. And yeah, they weren't perfect. They used muscle and stuff. I'm not saying they didn't. All right, here's another excellent book. It's a book by Kingsley Amis called The Alteration. It's a steampunk novel basically, and it's about it's about a future time, and this kid wants to become a singer, and he and the only thing they liked was falsetto, so they wanted to, of course, alterate a certain part of his body to keep that voice very high. And the King of Martin Luther was promoted to Pope back in the 17th. So it's an alternative history book, and I've read this book. It's really funny, and it's kind of sad too. And this is a really great science fiction novel because they have tubes that go through the air that take them to places, and it's run by steam. Steam is the main force of the technology, and it's pretty good. It's really good stuff, really funny and serious at the same time. Okay, this is an excellent novel by Malcolm Bradbury, and just saying that hurts me to say, because anything else by Malcolm Bradbury, I don't really care for. But it's a novel about a novelist is invited to travel to Stockholm in Russia to take part in what is enigmatically referred to as the Diderot Project, which is Denis Diderot, great French philosopher, great writer, very funny guy. And he meets a bunch of people that are part of this Diderot Project, and one's a lustful opera singer, others a Swedish diplomat, and then they go to Russia, and they reveal more about Denis Diderot, the son of a knife maker in Langres, and went to Paris and compiled the encyclopedia, a book that changed the world. I don't know about that, but it was very important and very influential. And this is good stuff. It's a good historical novel. And of course, it's fiction, but it deals with stuff that really happened. Okay. Next up is a book that I read about 4 months ago maybe. And it is the excellent book called The Last September. And this is a very, very beautifully written, poignant, funny, and just sad. And it's about the troubles in Northern Ireland and Ireland itself, and visitors coming to an estate. These people, of course, are all wealthy, and yet the war reaches them, and it's a really the opening of the novel is probably one of the finest openings I've ever read of any book. It just really welcomes you into the book, and every page is just Elizabeth Bowen could write prose. I mean, it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's a book that you hate finishing because you loved it so much. And it's a sad book. I mean, there's a lot of tragedy in it, a lot of tragic events, and some funny stuff, and some great characters, and just, I can't say enough about this book. It's an outstanding book, and it makes me want to read some more of Elizabeth Bowen, and I've yet to do that. It's a busy time of the year, and that'll be it for today, folks. Hope you're having a magnificent holiday season. Hope all is well with you and yours, and all the best. Bye-bye.